Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers found sometime last week has been inspected in Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
The views, opinions, and representations expressed on the K-Ghost Radio Network and its website are those of the host, guest, and participants, and they are not necessarily those of or endorsed by the network, its affiliated stations and broadcast, management, or advertisers of the network. The show is found under LJA Broadcasting Network. UFO Talk Radio can, but does not necessarily promote any particular lifestyle, belief, religion, political affiliation, or other personal practice. These shows are for entertainment purposes only, and they are not intended to treat or diagnose and/or claim to cure any disease or condition, or give any medical or legal advice. All music is purchased and owned by LJA Broadcasting.
Some fun right along with us, broadcasting live deep from the desert of Nevada. Welcome to the Glenn Leary Show. Now, broadcasting live from deep in the desert of Nevada, K-Ghost Radio presents UFOTalkRadio.com with your host, Larry Glenn Anderson, Glenn Larry.
And that is me. I welcome everybody, all my friends and friends from all of the world, listening all of the world, of course, are broadcasting deep from the desert of Nevada. To all the small micro broadcasters, all the micro broadcasters, all the small stations, low power stations, and of course, a couple of FMs out there. We want to thank KBHR 57 in Siskiyou, Alaska, and of course, KPBF up there in, up there in beautiful Pahrump, Nevada. When I mentioned Pahrump, Nevada, I just love it up there. It's not too far away, and people are listening. Yes. Area 51 Talk Radio. We are also on UFO Talk Radio, iHeart, and it goes on and on and on. You can see our websites, and you can see where else we're at. Yes, a lot happening. Yeah. Little windy up here, where I am at. 50-mile-an-hour winds. My antennas are going everywhere, but we're still on live. Yes, we are. I'll tell you for sure. I'm gonna have a very special guest on tonight. His name's Larry Battson. This gentleman is an educator of wildlife. Yeah, and I'm talking wildlife. We're not talking puppies and kitties and what have you. We're talking the real stuff. And from bamboos to bears to snakes, you name it. He has been around them, and he can tell you a lot about it. We're going to talk about that tonight. Yes, we are. I want to say thanks to Shelton Battery out there, by the way, for supplying the batteries for our RV, the K-Ghost Radio, UFO Talk Radio bus that we go around broadcasting and seeing shows and seeing people. Thank him so very much. If you get a chance, you have any problems about batteries or questions about batteries, contact Sheldon Battery, 702-362-8180. Donated. Thank you so very much for all that. And Tina's Hair, we thank her out there. Ray's Honey, of course, and Carpet's Tile USA. Fran, about the carpet scenes, flooring they put in our beautiful studio. Gosh, gotta thank those people. Yes, gosh. I hope your week's gone very well. And of course, you know, today is April 13th, 3 years after Art Bell had passed away. And yes, sad. We lost a great broadcaster. On today, also, a friend of mine's father passed away, and I give love and send out all the warmth, heart feelings from my soul to my good friend out there, and Travis. So, I mean, life is very precious wherever you're at. If whoever is out there, I mean, come on, life is important no matter what's going on in the world or what's happening in the world. Life is important, and do not forget that. All right, we're going to go right to a kind of a PSA for everybody. Then I'm going to have our guest on. I can't wait. Yes, sir.
Every day, people are afraid to report violent crimes. In times like these, choosing to report a crime or helping the police can be a difficult decision. A no-snitching culture has sprung up in our communities, making it unpopular and sometimes even dangerous to report a crime. Do the right thing by calling 911 or your local crime tip line. If you're the victim of a crime, report it. If you know about a crime, report it. To learn more about how to do the right thing, visit ncpc.org or contact your local law enforcement agency.
A message from the U.S. Department of Justice, National Crime Prevention Council, and the Ad Council.
There's no typical meth user. I was from an upper middle class family. Meth is terribly addictive. My first time using it, I was hooked. There was no turning back. I lost my job. I was homeless. I never thought I'd see my family again. I have a great fear of meth because it took so much of me. I mean, it took everything. Meth took over my soul.
Visit our website at drugfree.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America.
It is windy out. Lights have been flickering. Our special guest tonight, Larry Battson. This guy is incredible. What a life he's had. They call him the animal guy. Yeah, imagine that, the animal guy. And boy, I'll tell you, he has got some cool stories. And we're going to talk to him right now. Larry, are you on? Are you on, buddy?
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Our pleasure. And boy, you're quite a famous guy, man. You go all over all the schools and teach about wildlife and all those different animals that you have. You've been on several big stations and big shows, TV shows, newscasts. All that's been written about you. And go ahead and tell the folks how you got started and where you're at.
Well, I live in west central Indiana, a little town called Clinton Falls. We live in the middle of nowhere. And I haven't heard a siren by my house in months. So that's kind of how rural we are. This is where I keep my wife and I keep our animal collection, our animal family, ones we take to schools. And, 41 years I've been visiting schools with our animals, baboons, jaguars, leopards, pumas, lions, tigers, bears,
That's great.
snakes, alligators,
Oh, boy.
tarantulas, you name it. And we've been visiting schools with an educational message, and because I realize when we're speaking to 400 or 500 kids at a time, which we do, we're not talking to necessarily future zoologists, but they're all going to grow up and vote, and they're going to help us make the decisions on why we need to keep our national parks and our national forest lands and not let it get commercially taken over. We need the wildland.
Yes. Yes, we do. Gosh. So these animals that you've got, I mean, they were donated to or how these animals?
A variety of. I've worked with zoos over the years. I know people that raise, reputable people that raise wild animals, that breed wild animals, that sort of thing. And some are rescues. Most of the alligators, I think I've rescued probably over 20 alligators in the last few years. Probably the most well-known one came out of Harlem, and that was the incident where they closed off the entire city block when they found out this man had a tiger and an alligator in his apartment in Harlem.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and the tiger ended up at a preserve in Ohio, and I got a call and asked if I wanted to take the alligator. So I said, well, I've got.
I mean, he had an alligator in an apartment. My gosh, crazy.
Well, what had happened is he'd gotten injured by the tiger. He went to the hospital, and the doctor saw the injury and realized that's not what he said. That's not like accidentally poking yourself with a knife. He said, that looks like an animal bite. So while he was at the hospital, the police went to his residence, and they looked in through the windows, and there they saw the tiger laying in the living room.
Oh, my gosh.
And having a little nap.
Mm-hmm.
And once they got in there and then they went to the bathroom, that's where he kept the alligator. And it made, my gosh, that made national news. In fact, after I said I would take it, I think within the hour I got a call from NBC, CNN, CBS, you name it.
Oh my goodness. Gosh.
Wanting to know why we wanted to take the animal. Well, I had nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
Florida
Can't send it down the
they
street.
got 1 million.
Yeah.
In most states where alligators are native, there's plenty. Believe me, there's plenty. So.
Gosh. And they sure quite a population, I understand too.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's hard to conceive that at one time they were almost extinct here in the United States because of they were slaughtered for the industry.
Right.
But once they protected them, it didn't take long. The alligators came back.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's plenty of alligators in Florida. I don't think there's a drainage ditch in Florida that doesn't have an alligator living there.
That's great. Oh, I'm glad I'm in the desert up here.
That's true. You don't have to worry about that.
So now you have a big bear too. How big is that bear?
We have a couple bears. We have one. The male's name's Buck, and his sister's name's Faith, and he's about 500 and some odd pounds. I've worked with him close to 21 or 22 years.
Wow.
When he was a cub, he'd go to schools with us, and of course, then they get about 200 pounds or so. It's time, because we have to think sensibly that if an animal would have its worst moment, could we get it out of the situation we're in? So when the bears get some real size on them, I just don't, I'm not trying to be Tarzan. I'm just trying to educate. So
right. My gosh.
We retire them here to our home and feed them till they go somewhere else with the good Lord.
Yeah. How great is that? And what other animals do you have out there too, by the way?
Oh, we have a couple tigers. We've had as many as 6 tigers, and we have a baboon and our beautiful white red fox, and
they're beautiful.
Several alligator snakes and that sort of thing.
Now you feed these. It must cost you a lot of money to feed these animals. Quite sure.
Oh yeah, it's well, when the pandemic first started, we had trouble getting chickens, and
really?
That's what we feed the tigers, and so we may have put a little post on the good old Facebook. Before we knew it, people were checking their grocery stores and see if they had it. They really helped us out tremendously.
That's beautiful, man. Yeah, Facebook has been good that way with the people out there listening and seeing what you guys need and stuff. And now you have a you have a GoFundMe page, correct?
We've had them before. Yeah, we've had them. Most people. We have. I'm also a illustrator, so I do sell a lot of my artwork to raise money for our animals.
Great.
And I illustrate wildlife. That's on Facebook. It's the Larry Battson Animal Guy Art Studio.
Okay.
And that has all my artwork and so forth and information. So, and that's one of the ways we, as I mentioned earlier, raise funding.
Well, now, since you know all about animals, we're going to kind of step into the woods and talk about Bigfoot.
Okay.
Where did that come into your whole window?
Well, I've always been interested in it. From the first time I saw the Argosy magazine with the pictures of the Patterson-Gimlin film, so I had a fascination with it. I can remember waiting at the library for the delivery of Peter Burns' first book. I think it was In Search of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And reading that, and, totally just, encompassed with it. But, to me, it was just another animal and something else that lives in the forest. So I thought it was completely fine that I show an interest in it. Well, I do a lot of field work for Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. We do public relations. Jim Fowler, they'd invite him to speak at different organizations or zoos or nature centers. They'd always say to him, bring their animals. Well, he doesn't have any animals, but he knows people in the different parts of the country that do.
Right.
Yeah, so he was going to be down in Callaway Gardens in Columbus, Georgia. And we were down there, and he just got back from a trip from Russia. And he'd go to Russia to film the brown bear. And he said all the Russian guides wanted to talk about was Bigfoot. So, you know, it was an interesting discussion. Well, I no sooner got home, I received a phone call from Cleveland, Ohio, from a promoter there that puts on this big outdoor show. And we've been working for him for several years. And he said, do you have any ideas for something new we could do this year? So I said, well, I was just with Jim Fowler, and he was talking about Russians seeing Bigfoot, Russian guides.
Uh-huh.
And he said, you know, that'd probably be pretty good. I said, well, it's a natural public relation magnet. I mean, because there's so much, you know, such a great interest in it.
Right, right.
So I said, I'm going to put this exhibit, this display together. So I ended up calling up to Willow Creek, California, to Al Hodgson's variety store. Before I knew it, he was sending me mugs and bumper stickers.
Great.
And all this different souvenir stuff that he'd sold in regards to the Bigfoot.
Right.
So I asked him, I said, Al, I said, do you know anyone that has actually seen one? He said, well, he said, there was a couple guys that were through here a while back. Let me go get their number. And when he got back to the phone, he said, yeah, here we go. He said, one of the gentlemen was John Green, and the other one was Bob Titmuss. Well, John Green was the first researcher I ever talked to. And I called him in his home in Harrison Hot Springs, British Columbia. And he's a really nice fella. Before I knew it, I had him talked into coming to Cleveland, Ohio, and working with us on this exhibit and the show. But he said, you really need to talk to Bob Titmuss. And he lived about 3 blocks over. So I called him up. And he was a little different character. He wasn't too talkative. It took a while to get him to say anything. So finally, I just plain asked him. I said, Bob, I said, have you ever seen him? And he said, and he got real quiet. And he said, yeah. He said, twice. He said, first time was in 1941. I was in the Navy off the coast of Alaska in the Wrangell Narrows. And he said all the other guys were down in the ship eating, playing cards and whatever. He said, I decided I was going to go up on deck, take a look at this beautiful Alaskan scenery. So he climbs up there and he looks out along the beach, and there is a Sasquatch walking along the beach. He said, I can't tell you really how tall it was because it was too far away. But I could see it walked on 2 legs. It was chestnut brown in color, and it was big. It was just built big. And he decided that when he got out of the Navy that he was going to be hunting Sasquatches. Because in his own words, he killed and stuffed about every animal that lived in Alaska, but he's never, of course, killed one of those. So the second time was in Kitimat, British Columbia, or outside of it, I should say. And he was walking up to this rock, basically a rock wall.
Right.
And he watched 3 of these things climb up this rock wall, just like they would do in Yosemite National Park, and basically freestyle climb this rock wall. And they were over it. And he said it only took them just like half hour, maybe. He said it would have taken a man all day. So there's no way.
Wow.
So basically, when I hung up the phone with Bob Titmuss, it was a whole new ball game for me, because I was going to kind of make this exhibit, you know, tongue in cheek,
right,
a little sarcastic. But when I finished that conversation, I knew we were onto something pretty good here.
Yeah.
And I believed him. I believed every word he said, just the way he told me, and I just have a good way of reading people. Well, I get over to Cleveland, Ohio, and the show goes okay, but the most amazing thing was here John Green from Harrison Hot Springs, British Columbia, the foremost Bigfoot guy. We were only getting 15 or 20 people showing up to listen to him lecture. And now, today, if he was still alive and this would happen,
right,
we'd have thousands because of the popularity of the Bigfoot subject. So, first day we were there, you know, it's a long day. I get back to the room, and I was pretty much done with Bigfoot for the day, and my phone rings. And the guy calls me up, and he said, you the guy that was on TV today with John Green? I said, yeah. He says, I want to talk about Bigfoot. I said, well, I'm really just getting ready to eat, and I'll leave a couple tickets at the door, so if you want to come to the show, you can come on in for free. He said, no, I don't really want to do that. He said, I'll just tell you one thing. He said, and I said, well, what's that? He says, I've been at war with them. So I had to talk to him then. Yeah, he said he'd been at war with them.
That's interesting.
So apparently what had happened is he built this hall up in northeastern Ohio, and they kept having trouble getting the framework in. Something would come in at night and rip it out. So they ended up putting a guard on it, watching it all the time. They finally got the house built, and they get moved in. But it's weird because he said he'd hear noises he never heard before. He'd find things like his apple tree would be stripped in at night, no apples at all on it, not even laying on the ground.
Wow.
Then it makes no sense. So behind his house, he had a trailer, and one of the guys that worked with him was staying in that trailer. Well, he worked a different shift, and he got to come home a little bit later. My friend was in the garage welding, and this guy comes flying up the driveway, and he said, hey, I don't know what it was, but something walked across the road in front of me down there. So my friend, he said, oh, okay. He didn't believe it. So he walked into his trailer, and my friend was standing there in his driveway, and he could hear something kind of walking through the woods, and he thought, huh. So he turns off all the lights, and he goes inside.
Yeah.
Well, about 4 a.m, something walked up to his bedroom window and screamed so loud that literally the glass in the windows rattled. And he grabbed a pistol. His wife was saying, what in the world? And he grabs the pistol.
Right.
And he goes outside, and he hears it screaming and carrying on, and he shoots it. Then everything's quiet.
Huh. And
the only thing he could hear was walking around leaving. Well, this went on for 2 straight days. About the same time. Next day, same thing, except this time the wife said she's in, and she's moving. She's not staying at the house.
My gosh.
Yeah.
What is? I mean, do they sound human? How when they scream? What does it sound like, Morris? I have no idea.
Well, my friend Bob Jackson, Yellowstone Park Ranger, who had a sighting, he told me once he heard him scream. He said it sounded like 1,000 elk going to their death.
Oh, wow.
He said the volume and the length of the scream and the volume of it. He said there's no animal in Yellowstone that could have done that.
Oh, my gosh. So did your friend move, or what was the status there?
He's still there.
He's still there. And is he still dealing with this problem?
No. He had a remote area. He was living in a pretty remote area when he got the place. It gradually built up. And now, because of the cost of lumber, they're doing a lot of logging back here and pretty much destroyed it. So all this wild country that he once had behind his house, no more.
Where do you think they went to? I mean, deeper in
they seek out a place that's wooded, heavily wooded, and up in northeastern Ohio and western Pennsylvania, that's unheard to find.
Have you seen one, Larry?
I don't really want to get into that, but I know enough in my own mind,
right,
that anyone that says they for sure they don't exist, well, they don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
They have no. And I'm a wildlife educator. Now, I've said this too. I said if I ever saw one walk off of a spaceship, I'm done. I'm not interested.
And that has been brought up many times. Are they both the same type of thing? Is it a kind of they walk through a porthole or what have you? Are they connected? They're always normally, when people say they've seen Bigfoot, many times they say, I've seen a UFO too, along with it. And then you go, okay, which did you really see? Type of thing. But, I mean, I am not going to judge anybody whatsoever. I mean, if you saw one, you saw one. I wasn't there, so I don't know. But I'll tell you, we were camping up in Washington State, and we had rocks thrown into our tent area, and they were pretty good sized rocks. And we kind of just got the message to get out of there, so we did. And
that seems to be a common way of communicating that.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess. Well, we don't know. I mean,
no, we don't.
Do you think there are maybe a species of human that had been just mutated or something? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I know one thing. It's not like a DNA point away from a chimp or a gorilla. Far more than that, because we don't have one in a zoo. If it was something similar to intelligence of those animals, we'd have one.
Hmm.
These things, the biggest best way I can explain it is they're totally unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
That is why they've done so well. That's why they've been able to avoid it. But there's still thousands of sightings.
Yeah, there is.
I've said to myself, I bet only 1 or 2% of all sightings even get mentioned to their best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Most people can't believe what they saw, because usually it's only for 2 or 3 seconds. It's not very long.
Right.
Cross the road in front of the car. It's gone. What was that? I don't know. I have no idea. Boy, it looked weird. Bye.
Yeah. Okay.
And not mention it again. And that's where most of the sightings occur along our highways.
Yeah.
And then you get the people that have had a chance for a sighting that it's a long one, and that really messes them up, because now they totally realize that these things do exist.
Right.
And their outdoor experience, their woodland adventures are over. They're gone.
Mm.
They'll give up hunting. They'll give up hiking. They'll give up fishing, camping. I've heard it told to me too many times.
Really?
Yeah.
It scared them that much. It scared them that much.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. When I ask them about people that research them or are looking for them, they say, I'm sorry I ever saw it.
Really?
I'm just not the same anymore.
Yeah.
You're constantly looking over your shoulder. You've seen something that you realize that this thing is so incredibly massive. And if they've had a chance to see them move, they're so quick that any time they would want to, they could do it. I mean, it would be no question. You would not have a chance. You would not have the time to raise a gun and shoot it. Wouldn't happen. And most of the people that have had them in their binoculars or in their sights, their question is, will one shot do anything?
Yes.
What I'm looking at, I don't think so. And I'm seeing one, but there's 2, 3, 4, 5 I cannot see. I am not seeing. And they're going to be on the scene quick.
Yes.
And fast. I mean, unbelievably. And you're going to have to answer to something you just completely do not understand at all.
Do you think that they have ever taken anybody out of the woods? Now, a lot of people disappear in the woods, in the forest, and there's no reason for it. Put it on. I mean, you say they move that fast, they could grab you and off you go.
Right.
And what do they do with you?
Well, I was told by a Native American woman, they grab you by your ankles and beat you up against a tree if they have to go to that degree of whatever. But I had a friend who has a cabin 5 miles south of the Canadian border in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an Indian reservation not too far from there.
Mm-hmm.
And the story that he got was that 3 young men went off to run the salmon nets and never came back. Well, they went looking for them. The first one they found, he was just kind of a pile. He was just kind of like torn up, piled up. The second one was underneath a pile of boulders. And the third one was laying on the ground, and all the trees that surrounded that body had brain tissue on them. In other words, something had grabbed him by the ankles and beat him up against those trees.
Wow.
And because it was on a reservation, there's no
federal.
Say, we're not going in there to any law enforcement per se.
Right.
And so
I bet you the tribal police stayed away from that also. Boy.
Well, Native Americans know.
Yeah.
And who else? Someone else that knows are the lumberjacks, the people, the loggers that work in the Northwest and in Oregon and Washington, Northern California. Standard rule: once the sun starts to go down, get out of the woods.
Oh boy, you're right. Oh gosh. Pick them up by their ankles. We're going to go to commercial here real fast for my folks up there that are listening. Need to take a commercial break, and we'll be back. And I'm going to tell you, we'll be back with Larry Battson. I think this is fantastic. How interesting, huh? Stand by, folks.
Violence, theft, drugs, graffiti. It's all part of joining a gang. In times like these, we need to protect our children and our community from gangs. Gangs often prey on unsupervised teens with low self-esteem, who perform poorly in school, who seek a sense of belonging, or are simply bored. Joining a gang often involves violent hazing rituals. Once in a gang, members can become alienated from their families, school, and friends. Drugs, guns, and malicious activity are common elements in gangs. Trying to leave a gang can be a difficult and dangerous process. The best way to get out of a gang is never to join one. Protect kids from being recruited by a gang. Know who they're hanging out with. Involve kids in after-school activities and provide positive role models. Help reduce gang activities in your community by working with local law enforcement and school systems. Don't let a kid you know get involved with gangs. Visit ncpc.org to learn more or contact your local law enforcement agency.
A message from the U.S. Department of Justice, National Crime Prevention Council, and the Ad Council.
Now, back to Glenn Larry.
And we are back. Yes, Larry Battson. This gentleman is an educator for wildlife, and this man has seen a lot and done a lot with all sorts of wild animals. And we were just talking about Bigfoot. If you to recap his experiences and whatever you and what he's done and talked, and he's lectured and some cool stories. Do you have a couple more, Larry?
Oh, well, probably. We were talking about Bob Titmus.
Yeah.
And I talked to, one of the times I talked to him, he was telling me he basically knew the Bluff Creek area Patterson and Bob Gimlin had.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he's kind of the one responsible steering him in that direction. And he'd been in that area like 3 or 4 years before the film had been shot. And he was a meticulous tracker. I mean, he'd look on every branch, every leaf for a hair, anything. I mean, he just gets so enthralled. And usually he would go by himself.
Right.
Well, he was back in this rainforest before he realized it was getting close to dark. And he thought, oh, God. And you can't go walking around through there in the dark. That's how you get hurt or lost forever, because they've lost airplanes in that wilderness. So he said, oh, I'm going to have to stay the night. So what he ended up doing was with his hands, he dug a pit and big enough for him to lay in, and covered himself with leaves and sticks and things to protect him from the weather, because it was going to get chilly that night. So when he was finished, the only thing exposed was his face. So it's about 1, 2 in the morning, and you can hear something coming through the woods. And at first he thought it was elk, and that really worried him, because their hooves are like razor blades, and they cut him to shreds just by mistake.
Yes.
But as he's listening, he realizes it's bipedal. It's not elk. And he can hear it coming through the woods straight in his direction. Well, all of a sudden it stopped. And he could hear it breathing and sniffing the air. And he realized it could smell him, but it could not figure out exactly where he was at.
Right.
So it just started walking back and forth through the woods and screaming, throwing rocks, breaking tree branches. And about daylight, it left. Well, when he climbed out of that pit, he looked in that area. He said, Larry, he said, that looked like a bulldozer going down there. It's unbelievable. Well, when he went in to do the Patterson, when checking on the Patterson film after it had been shot, he comes down from University of British Columbia to the site. He's looking for the tracks. And when he finally finds the tracks, he looks at them real close, and he realizes that the track that he was looking at was the same size, and it had certain deformities in it, identical to the Patterson film animal.
Whoa.
So apparently that's what it was. It was one of the shot on the film, which was interesting. I mean,
yeah.
John Green told me once, he said, the longer you do this, the more questions you'll have.
Right. Oh my God.
You know, so many things just don't seem to make sense. Well, they're not predictable at all. They make no sense. That's why to survive.
Right.
And you know, there's a lot of animals that don't get photographed. A lot. The Sumatran tiger, for instance, they just discovered a species of monkey 2 or 3 years ago in northern Africa.
Oh, really?
The scientists had been in there a lot. And they just now discovered it. And of course, there's the old story about the mountain gorilla. It wasn't discovered till the early 1900s. Now, the people that lived up there told the scientists about them, but the scientists didn't believe it until they go up there and realize that they were right. Those people were right. Wow. And there's tribes in New Guinea that anthropologists know they're in there, but they can never find them unless they want them to. And, so all the arguments were, you know, how could they hide? How could they do this?
Right.
Well, it's no problem. And basically, as I've said before, I said in the daytime, they share the forest. At night, they own it.
Oh, boy, I bet you. Gosh. Well, I'm afraid to go in the forest by myself. No way. Especially, you know, nighttime, gosh. Even camping, you know. And, I mean, all sorts of wildlife out there, of course, as you say. But and one of these Bigfoot, Sasquatches, as they say, will just pick my tent up and I'd be sitting there and, you know, and it's all up to them. And I don't think do you think they can read our minds, or you think they can understand us, or what do you think? I mean,
well, there's a lot of things they can do. They can basically look at you and figure out what you're up to. So I tell these Bigfoot research people, you know, supposed experts, I say, you know, Bigfoot, you're gonna look for Bigfoot. Do you think? Why do you wear camouflage? You think you're gonna hide from them? I don't think so.
No. And
that marks you as one thing. It marks you as a hunter, guy that carries guns.
Yeah.
They probably had bad dealings with that, so right away they're gonna, you know, themselves are gonna label you.
Right.
Gonna avoid you. Now, then I've always said, I bet they have a sense of humor because, you know, he's standing there in the woods and here comes some big old chubby guy in his camouflage and his night vision cameras and glasses hanging over his neck. And they're kind of giggling to themselves. They said, where's a rock?
Yeah, right.
A rock at that.
Yeah. Someone had said that we're the movie for them to watch.
Yeah, we are. I mean, we're really pretty pitiful, you think about it.
Yeah.
Physically compared to any animal.
Right.
I mean, I challenge. Just walk off in the woods and figure out a way to live.
Yeah, there you go. Gosh.
You know.
Just
do that. We wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, truthfully. Now if someone actually did shoot one, all right, and they did kill one, like you say, the others might be out there, you'd never see them, they'll just tear you apart. But they always, if they always take whatever happens to their dead.
Oh, there's a lot of easy ways.
I mean,
you know, how many times do you go to anybody that goes hiking, how many times do you actually find a dead animal? I mean, the woods are filled with birds and
right.
stuff, and you very seldom see it. My friend, the Yellowstone Park Ranger, he says that 31 years he's in the backcountry of Yellowstone, he only found one grizzly bear that had passed.
Yeah.
Only one was dead. And these things, you know, like when somebody said to me, which makes perfect sense, that it isn't that hard for them to take a bunch of boulders and just cover the remains.
Yeah, you never know.
You know, they found skeletons, partial skeletons of things, you know, but Daniel Boone, the old saying from his, he said that he supposedly killed one in Kentucky.
Really?
And buried it, yeah. And when he told somebody about it around a campfire, a group of people, they all laughed at him, and he didn't talk about it again.
There you go. See?
No more, yeah.
Gosh.
It's such an obscure. I actually got a phone call from it. Is it just a distant relative wondering about that story? I said, well, I can't remember, to tell you the truth. I've just had it in my head for so long.
Right.
But I believe it's in his journals. So
interesting.
Yeah. And the Lewis and Clark expedition, you know, and Teddy Roosevelt, all these people had dealings.
Yeah, I'd heard about Teddy Roosevelt. He had seen something like that, and kind of, you know. Well, I hope we do preserve our beautiful forest, for God's sake. I mean, I don't know what else. I don't know what they'll be up to if they don't. I mean, we need that. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah,
for a lot of things, for a lot of reasons. But
well,
with
the government has a plan. If a body or part of a body was ever located or brought in or whatever you want to do, they immediately they have an emergency session of Congress, make it to an endangered species, and the area was found would be protected and guarded by the National Guard.
Right.
They've already said they issued a page-and-a-half press release.
Oh, really?
In 1977. Because when I went to speak to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in '91, and I spoke to about 250 law enforcement people about this, and they'd never done anything like that before. At the end of it, I'd always say, "How many of you just think this is a big bunch of bull?" And not one hand came up afterwards.
Oh,
It
wow.
kind of surprised me. And after I did that talk, this was in outside of Washington, D.C. at the National Conservation Training Center. I got emails from people that worked in parks all over the country because we did 2 broadcasts. I actually did a lecture, then I also did a television program for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Network, which went out to over 1,200 outlets. And they said, you know, all the things we've had shows on, which included, Jane Goodall and some of the other people that they've had in the lecture.
Mm-hmm.
Said that darn Bigfoot show is still the most popular. And every time I go there to stay, if I'm in the area, I'll stay there. I'll walk into my room and that thing will be on the television. It doesn't fail. I mean,
That's great, though. I mean,
yeah, it makes you realize that's why the popularity of shows like Finding Bigfoot, people are, you know, they're just so fascinated with it.
Yeah.
And I think for the kids, it's great because anything that gets them outdoors, I'm all for.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Well, they take off in the woods in the Sahara, as I understand, and they go out there and hunt, and not hunt, they look for them, and you know, type of thing. And there's tours. I had a couple guys on the show here, and quite fascinating. One thinks it's its own type of species that has developed and has evolved. I mean, and thinks that they're so clever. He says, man, they can smell you, see you coming from miles away.
Oh yeah.
And I tend to believe that, to tell you the truth. Yes, I do.
Once you climb out of your truck, they know you're there.
Yeah, right. Has there been any latest type of sightings at all? Have you know about that you may know about?
I don't think so much. You know, everyone seems like somebody's come up doing DNA testing. So, and the new Bigfoot show that's on, I can't even think of the name of it. They supposedly got some evidence. So we'll see when it's over. But
right,
most of the Bigfoot programs that have been on have been pretty silly.
Yeah.
I mean, especially the ones that go out at night. That's just making scary television. That's all that's doing.
Yeah.
It's not really anything.
Hollywood.
And to shoot it in the dark is just stupid. I mean, what you know, the Patterson Gimlin film, daytime. Freeman film, daytime.
Right.
So nighttime is not, you know, they try to make spooky television.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna open the lines here real fast and see if we get a couple calls. If we do or don't, we'll just keep going here, man.
To call UFO Talk Radio, the Glenn Larry Show, deep in the dark desert of Nevada, call 702-874-1114. North of the Rockies, call 702-874-1114. West of the Rockies, call 702-874-1114. And south of the Rockies, call 702-874-1114. And east of the Rockies, call 702-874-1114. First-time callers, call 702-874-1114. And if you just want to talk to the Glenn Larry Show, call 702-874-1114.
We're here with Larry Battson. Geez, he's got together education about wildlife. We're talking about Bigfoot also. And boy, he's had some real good stories. And if you've heard, if you want to call and talk to him, you may. You got the number. I made sure you had the number, by the way, with this beautiful way of doing it. Yeah, gosh, there's been a lot of sightings up in the Pacific Northwest. Do you think that area has more Bigfoot in that area, or do you think in Florida? I mean, they call it a swamp something down there, I guess, but swamp monkey or whatever. But where do you think the biggest sightings are, Larry?
No, it's hard to say. British Columbia, you can't, it's always been a. But you're talking about millions of acres. It's like a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
Not unless the darn thing walks in front of you, you're not going to see it.
Right.
Once it's at dusk, their coloration, they're invisible. I mean, they can walk right, they could walk right, and they do. They walk up to you 3 or 4 feet away, and you wouldn't notice it, not unless you heard it or smelled it. I mean, they're that sly. But Ohio, Pennsylvania, they get a lot. Here in my home state of Indiana, right here at my home.
Right.
I've had one of the reasons we purchased this was there had been an unbelievable sighting here within, gosh, it's about maybe a half mile from my house. It's that far. 3 dad and his son and a friend of his son's were squirrel hunting back in the woods, and they got there before daylight.
Uh-huh.
And they spread out, and the boy, he's sitting there in the dark with his shotgun, and he hears something coming through the woods, and he thought it was just a huge buck, a huge deer.
Mm-hmm.
So he's thinking, man, I'm gonna get a look at this. And I said, I might put my deer stand right here. So he climbs up over the ridge and he looks down below across this ravine, and he doesn't see anything when he first looks, but the second time he scans it,
Mm-hmm.
he sees this thing. It's about 6.5 feet tall, black, standing next to this tree and it's looking straight at him. And he raises his gun. As soon as he raises that shotgun, aimed it at this thing charged him. Well, that just was totally out of his perspective. He just fell to the ground. I mean, his knees went to jelly. And this thing took off through the woods, and I asked him how fast it ran. He says, well, it ran as fast as any deer, but the little trees, it didn't run around, it just run over. And he said, the farther away it got from me, he said, the louder and meaner, more aggressive the scream sounded. So when he's telling me this story, that's part of it.
Right.
I'm thinking, that's just like it's like a baboon. They come onto the lion, a couple barks, and the farther away they get from the lion, the tougher they act. The more aggressive they sound. That's exactly what this was doing. Well, anyway.
Wow.
So the kid's like, he's just beyond himself.
Imagine.
So Dad hears these screams. He runs over to his son. Son can't even talk yet, and they're looking for his buddy, and they can't even find him. So they head back to the car. They call the local conservation officer, and 1 or 2 calls, they found out that his friend had ran home, and he lived 3 miles away. And he had seen it too. He watched it all.
Wow.
And he just got the heck out of there.
Mm.
So the conservation officer kept them apart, but he said neither one of these boys were artists. He says, but Larry, they said they drew the same thing.
Gosh.
And he said, I have to tell you, he said, I found a 16.5-inch footprint back there too. I said, really? He says, yeah. And he says, before I was going to go back there, they asked me what I was going to take back with me. And he said, what do you mean? He said, well, you got to take something bigger than what's hanging on your hip. And so they made him get a salt gun or whatever they used out of his trunk to go back before they would even go back there.
Mm.
And that night, the boy said he was taking the trash out, and those screams that he'd heard that early morning that day, that night, he'd come from those woods.
Oh, my
and gosh. They moved. They got out of there.
They moved. Yeah.
So we live right in the same
My
neighborhood.
gosh.
It's fantastic.
Snap right in the middle of them, huh?
Oh, yeah. I mean, people ask me, they said, do you go researching? I said, well, my thought is if you're looking for it, you're not going to find it.
Right.
Kind of like hunting mushrooms.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'd be more of a chance running into one taking out my trash than, lurking around the woods like I was up to something all day.
Right.
I mean,
And, as they watch you. Yeah. Gosh.
Yeah.
They're watching you.
They see how you act,
Yeah. Yeah.
People, they'll come, and report before they'd approach children, like in a campsite or something.
Yeah.
And I said, well, they have no fear of children because, kids are gentle. I mean, that guy in the ball cap and the
plaid shirt.
Shotgun,
Yeah.
That's a different deal.
Right.
So things size all it up.
I'm getting that this Bigfoot was very upset with that gun being pointed at him. And I think that he remembered that. And they must have a great memory. I mean, if you don't.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're intelligent. They're smart.
Yeah.
They have, and this is only from my witnesses, but they do different hand signals that mean different things.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that is fact. And they do a whistling that the tree docs don't do anything but tell them where you're at.
Right.
That's it's no communication deal. It's nothing like that at all. That's not used. Vocalizations are used, whether it be a whistling or the scream or just plain intimidating you mentally. I mean, they have. They always say when you go hunting, don't look at the prey before you shoot it because they'll sense it.
Huh.
Well, these are the same way, but times 10. So in other words, you're not going to sneak up on one. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I hear you.
If you do, there's another reason for it, and because you were really good at tracking or something. That's not even in the equation.
Wow. They seem to get along with other animals, you think? Or, I mean, what do you think?
Well, they prey on them. I mean,
yeah.
I had a gentleman on our Bigfoot stream show, and he called in, and he was hunting in southern Indiana, and he was up at a tree stand, and he was watching this doe, and he said, well, I wasn't interested in her. I was just waiting for a really nice buck. He said, I was watching this doe, and all of a sudden out of the brush comes this thing. He said, walked on two legs. He grabbed it, punched that deer right rib cage, and knocked it to the ground, and he grabbed it by the legs, beat it up against a tree.
Oh, wow.
And then tucked it underneath its arm and walked off.
Now, there you go.
And he said, I had no belief in this Sasquatch Bigfoot thing until that morning. And he doesn't even hunt there anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like fish too.
Oh yeah. Fish. Well, the people say, well, what would they eat? Of course they would support it. I mean, because their diet's basically the same as like a bear.
Yeah.
And, they have an hors d'oeuvre walking around all the time. It's a dependable food supply. It may not be the tastiest, but there's a possum. I mean, they're everywhere. So there's food source, deer, box turtles, snakes. The food part's no problem.
Yeah. Gotcha. God. Yeah. Man. Beat you across the tree. It's pretty whacked out.
Oh, they're brutal. I had a Native American gal call me, and I'd done a television show, and I didn't identify the places I was talking about, and she knew where I was talking about. She told me just as frankly as possible. She said, "Oh, there's 5 of them in there." I said, "How do you know that?" She says, "I know." She says, "I can call them in." I said, "What do you mean?"
Oh.
"I can call them to us, but you have to realize something." She said, "Yeah." I said, "You'll be risking your life." I said, "Well, why would I be doing that?" She said, "If you get between the male and the female, or the male and the baby, the male will kill you." I said, "How will he kill me?" "He will grab you by the ankles and beat you up against a tree." I mean, just as nonchalantly said as she could. I said, so, I've heard that over and over and over and over. So that's what tells me there's something to that. You can go back to what she was going to use was a something that's used by the Bushmen in Africa. It's called a bull roar. And it's a piece of wood on a string. When you twirl it over your head, it makes a whirring sound.
Right.
He said that would attract a Sasquatch.
Wow.
Now, Smokey Crabtree, now he was the fellow that was behind the legend of Bogey Creek, South Arkansas. I asked him, I was doing one of these conferences with him, and I asked him, do they smoke? I said, how do you call a Sasquatch in? He said, oh, it's a stressed rabbit call. He said, it works really well. So I told that to somebody. They tried it, and they said they would never do that again.
Yes, my gosh.
That was
my gosh.
Too scary.
Yeah.
And then once again, why are you looking for them?
Yeah.
You're that terrified. I mean, personally, myself, I'm not. I'm totally realize they exist. You know, I've found out things that I've never told anyone, and I'm content with it.
Right.
You know.
We got about 5 minutes here. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I said I've been doing on the internet, getting eyewitnesses and doing forensic drawings of what they saw. And we've done pretty good with it. I mean, as far as, you know, their description of coming up with something that's similar to what they saw. So it's been pretty successful. In fact, there's a program on the stream called Hidden Existence, and I'm going to be doing it on there for every couple of weeks, where they bring in eyewitnesses and
good.
I draw what they supposedly had seen.
Right. And what else do you have coming up, so we get that out to the folks out there, our listeners?
Oh, not too much. But we've got our Facebook pages for the people who love animals, Larry the Animal Guy and Friends, and you can join up, and all of our latest animal stuff on there.
That's totally great.
So not too much, really.
Right.
Going on per se.
Now, I understand people have left fruit and nuts for them and all sorts of stuff, and they do take them. I mean, but you're far away, and you come back and they're gone.
Well, it could have been a raccoon. See, that's non-positive
raccoon.
evidence. Yeah, it could have been anything.
Yeah, right on.
I can remember my wife. I'd done some show on one of the blogs, and one of the guys said, what you need to do is you need to get you an Almond Joy candy bar and hang it from the trees.
It's really.
Oh, okay. And so we're at Walmart, and we're checking out. Of course, there's all that candy, so I lean across the conveyor belt and grab an Almond Joy.
Right.
And my wife asked me, she said, why are you buying that? You never eat those. And I explained to her. I said, well, some guy says that Bigfoot will come up and take it. She goes, are you stupid or what? The raccoons could climb up there and take it. Between her and the Walmart cashier, neither one of them were giving me any mercy at all. I ended up putting the Almond Joy.
That's
You know,
so good.
I thought, I'm willing to try. It's no big deal. You know, I hang it up there. But, you know, it's not unless you're waiting nearby.
Right.
Actually see what does it. It's like a structure thing.
Gosh.
People say they build structures. I don't think so. Most of those structures I've seen are big enough for 2 or 3 of those to fit in.
Right. I've seen that also. That's just phony.
No.
Yeah. They would have more of a nest, if you would think, right, than put a structure.
I just think the suckers are just so tough. I mean, even if it's cold as hell, they could go out there and just lay on the ground and sleep. Let the snow cover them, and as the snow gets deeper, they get warmer. Like a wolf or a coyote or fox will do.
Right. Yeah. Wow. That's something. Gosh, Larry, I want to thank you so very much for being on.
You're welcome.
And I want to have you on again. I really do.
Oh, okay.
And we'll go over some other stuff. And but it's fascinating what you do as a educator about animals, wildlife, and what have you. Especially this whole situation about Bigfoot. And it's nice to have a good conversation with someone that, it's been there and you've got secrets. I know what you, of course, that's the way it is. That's the game, but that's how you survive. And, but what would you tell the audience to do? I mean, don't look for them, stay away from them, or they're dangerous. What would you say to the audience before you?
Just enjoy the outdoors. Maybe one day, who knows, you might see something you can't figure out what the You might. 99% of the people don't.
Right.
But, just get out in the outdoors, And if you're thinking about it all the time, it's never going to happen. And I told the research people, I said, don't wear camouflage. Go to Walmart and get you a nice bright colored Hawaiian shirt. Wear that. And you'll have them completely confused. And who knows? They may be so confused, they may come up to your back door to see what you're all about.
Oh, boy, I'll tell you. I'm a freak. Larry, again, thank you so much. We'll be in touch real soon.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Thank you kindly. All right. How interesting was that show? Oh, I told you and I promised you. Thank you for listening, everybody. God bless. Be well. And again, to Travis and his family, I send my love.
I got the windows rolled down, got the radio up, and I'm heading out of Vegas tonight. And it's 1:30 on a 4-day run, and the desert is a welcome sight.